All right, Bill, we ready to roll?
We're ready.
Here we go. Good afternoon, everyone, and happy Thursday to everyone, and happy week number 2 of the PB Summer Seminar Series. Thanks for all that are coming on and logging on to this. And just so you know, everyone, we'll be doing this all summer long. This is actually week 2. We're in presentation 9 of 67. So we'll be doing this until Monday through Friday at 2 p.m. every day until the end of or to the middle of September. Just a reminder to everyone, there's a couple ways you can log on. You can always go to performbetter.com. You'll see the presenter of that day that'll be right on the main screen. You can just click on that and it'll bring you right to the Zoom link. So if you feel that anyone you know wants to get on, you want to pass the word out to everybody, please do. And like I said, these are going to be free all summer long. Regarding the video, these are all being recorded. We are actually going to download all the videos onto our new Perform Better app, which will be coming out. Hopefully in the next 4 to 5 weeks. So be patient with us. We've been working on this for 2 years. There's going to be a lot of extra things on there. There'll be a lot more videos than what we just have here in 2020. We'll have previous summits on there and previous presentations. So it's going to be pretty cool when it's done. But there's just a couple more things that we're working on and a couple glitches we're fixing. But we're hoping to go live towards the end of July or sometime in August. All right, it's a pleasure for me to present our Thursday presentation here in week 2, Bill Parisi. Bill and I actually go back a long time, and I'm not going to say our age, but Bill and I actually, when I first came into the industry, when we first came in to head up Perform Better, Bill was actually one of the first guys I met. And long story short, there was a seminar that we were sponsoring, and Bill was just starting off in the industry, and Bill was buying some medicine ball from us and other things, and we were talking about the seminar. And what happened is we ended up sharing a room together in Chicago for the first one of the first Gambetta seminars back in 1992. So ever since then, Bill and I have been friends. Bill has come a long way since 92 as being a trainer and working with athletes. He started his own business. He had a 3,000 square foot facility in New Jersey, Parisi Speed School. And we were just talking a little bit earlier about that, but by 1997, in that 3,000 square feet, Bill did almost $1 million. He did $997,000 that year, which was probably unheard of for a 3,000 square foot facility in 97 with training for athletes. Since then, Bill has grown his franchise into close to, I think he's about 99 or 100 facilities worldwide right now. He's got 3 in China. The Middle East, he's got 1 in the Middle East, but all over the U.S., Parisi Speed Schools. He's developed a facility that actually not only trains and educates athletes. He also, Bill, you still working combine stuff? You still training for combine anymore? Is that?
Yeah, we're doing some of that in Fairlawn in our flagship. Yes.
Still some of that. Well, Bill, I know for years when Martin Rooney was one of Bill's main trainers, I know they had at least 15 combine athletes a year. And I always joked about Bill and Martin about how much money was made out of that 3 months of training for those combine athletes, how they, with increasing their speed, strength, how much they increased their actually potential in their signing contract. So you guys have made a lot of people a lot of money. And here's a presentation today that Bill got on this topic about 4 years ago. Whenever Bill gets on something, he gets fascinated with it. And it's one of those topics he had to dive in and find out anything, everything and anything he could about fascia. He went out and he sought out the best. He did his typical Bill Parisi when, like I said, when he gets on something, he becomes insane with it, and he wants to learn as much as he can. Bill spoke a little bit about fascia last year with us. He actually has a nice way of making it simple, despite it being a very complex topic. So really impressed at how Bill does that, and really pleased to present to you a good presenter, a good friend, Bill Parisi.
Thank you so much, Chris. And I'm honored to be here, and I can't thank you enough and the Perform Better team for all you guys have done for me and the industry. And I will say a couple quick things. And obviously I don't want to go too long, but Perform Better, the fact that they're giving out over 60 presentations, and they're making them available, and they're doing it just to better the industry, is unheard of and is unprecedented and from my 30 years being in the industry. And the fact that they're giving such great information is just a tribute to their desire to advance the industry and truly help people succeed. So, you know, Chris, team, I can't thank you guys enough. You've helped me build my organization to 100 facilities around the world, helped me get better every day. The network I've created through you guys and through all the events that you do. I just think sometimes people don't realize, you know, the networking opportunity. There's the education and the networking. What you guys do to help network everyone is just as valuable as the education. And Chris, I know you said that was one of my best presentations ever, was the power of the network. So I just want to say thanks for getting on today. I want to make it well worth your time. My goal is to get a 10 out of everyone once you leave this presentation. So in the Q&A, make sure you jot down your questions. We're going to attack them at the end and make sure we do that to succeed. Now, what's great about being young, and when you're young, you're always in this discovery process, right? Young kids, you see them, there's tons of aha moments when you're young. And as you get older, you don't get as many, but you got to be looking for them. You got to be on that quest, which you are today. You know, you're on that quest today. You're on this webinar, you're listening to these things. And I've been on this quest. So I went to that bunch of seminars when I was younger, always looking for information. And guess what? I'm just as hungry. It's 30 years later. You know, I've been in this thing for a long time, and I'm always out there looking, because my attitude is we still are on the scratching the surface. And when I started to learn more about fascia, I realized how much I didn't know. And that's what today's about. It's the thrill of discovery, looking through the industry or through performance training with maybe some new optics. And I think that's something that's really important, because when you have those aha moments, it really energizes you and it inspires you and it motivates you and it differentiates you once you learn something. And, you know, when I started speed training 30 years ago, back in 1990, people thought, you know, hey, you can't improve speed. It's a born trait, right? I had to convince a lot of people. Guess what? Now, speed training, absolutely, there's lots of research how to improve speed. I feel I've been reborn because I'm in that same spot with fascia right now where I was 30 years ago with speed training. Not many people know about it, understand it, that it's trainable, that has 10 times more of the proprioceptors than muscle, that it's a newly discovered organ in the body. I was like, wow, 5 years ago when I started to do a deep dive, I was like, wow, aha moment. This is what the missing link. And we're going to dive into that today and hopefully get you excited about it. But a little background, some of you may already know my story, but just to give you what gives me the right to talk about this, puts me in this position here to be able to give expert advice. Well, one, I lived it as an athlete, and I think that's important to experience it to a degree, at least to maybe be an authority on it. You know, I've worked with, you know, thousands of athletes, but being a javelin thrower, I was a multiple Division I All-American, went to the U.S. Olympic trials. I don't say that to impress you, but to impress upon you. A 5'10" Italian isn't supposed to throw the javelin really far. They're usually 6'4" Norwegians, right? Or Finns, right? As an Italian, we're not really supposed to throw javelins really far. But, you know, I've done that because as a young athlete, I literally traveled the world. I put a fundraiser together. And believe it or not, I went to Finland in 1989 to train and compete with Tapios Kouros. Now, that's a 6'6" Finnish man that won the gold medal in 1988. I had the opportunity to compete against him and learn from him and really understand performance training at a really deep level, because the javelin throw, to throw it really far at a short height at 5'10", you got to run really fast down that runway with a 7-foot spear in your hand and all of a sudden stop. When you're almost running full speed, you're running up about a 90% intensity sprint, and you got to stop on a dime. So you need speed, strength, flexibility, core strength, all these things. So I realized, man, training for the jav is really training for every sport, every field and court sport. You need speed, you need mobility, you need flexibility, you need power transfer, core stiffness, all these great things. So I learned all these movements, medicine ball exercise, physio balls, back in the 1980s in Finland, kettlebells. And I was like, wow, field and court sports really need this type of training. And that's when I had an aha moment back as a sophomore in college training in Finland for the summer. And I realized I ultimately want to do this as a business, and went on to study graduate exercise physiology and whatnot. I have an undergraduate degree in finance that, didn't hurt the business side of things that, I think makes me a little bit of a unique animal in the industry and probably help with my success. But wanted to share that with you because really when I went to Finland, I kind of realized, man, there's so much out there. And since that day, I've never stopped being on this quest of going to seminars. Today, I'll go around the world going to seminars to learn, whether it be a Franz Bosch or a Tom Myers or whoever it may be, just attacking the information. And what I like to do is try to make it simple. I work to get this information, dumb it down, and just get it so I can deliver it to the masses so people can get a lot out of it. And that's been the goal, and that's kind of what we're doing. So the Parisi Speed School started that organization back in 1992, like Chris said, when I met him, and started out of a $500 van, $50,000 in debt, and just willing to train anybody that was willing to listen. I gave a bunch of free seminars. I tell an old story about this, is that when I graduated college in 1990, I went to University of Florida. I took anatomy and exercise phys as an undergrad down there. I was a 23-year-old taking some of these courses, and I volunteered and got a graduate assistantship for the Gators. I was the strength coach for the track team back in 91, and I helped out with the football team. That was Steve Spurrier's first year. And I had all these, interesting opportunities because I also started training Phil Simms. I trained Phil Simms back in the late 80s, believe it or not, because I went to a seminar that the head strength coach of the New York Giants was at, and met him. He was impressed with my background, Finland and medicine balls. I started teaching Phil Simms medicine ball drills back in 1989. He just came off Super Bowl MVP, and that's where this whole thing started. And once I got through that, All-American javelin, University of Florida strength coach of the New York Giants. I put a seminar together in 1991 with all these accolades on the flyer, inviting coaches to come see how to improve performance and speed. I sent them out to 5,000 coaches in New Jersey, and I had a pretty good resume. Guess how many people came to that first seminar? 0. I had 0 participation. People weren't ready for it. They just didn't buy into it. And I share that again, not to impress you, but to impress upon you. It takes time to move things forward. You got to be persistent, just like I was with speed training. Here I am again with fascia training. And here's the foundation. Now I got real science to back it up. Back in 1992, there wasn't a lot of research on speed training. Now I got tons of research on fascia and fascia training and what it is and how it works. Because nowadays, now I can pretty much get almost anybody on the phone. I'll call researchers up, and Chris knows I'm not afraid to make phone calls. I'm not afraid to get in somebody's face in a good way, and ask them questions and do a deeper dive and just dive into what they're doing. And I've been doing that now for 30 years, but more specifically in the last 5 about fascia. And it's been so invigorating. I'm so excited. This is unbelievable. This is the majority of soft tissue injuries because fascia is not getting addressed or trained in the appropriate way. So much great information to share. And I wanted to lay out the foundation for you here to kind of, give you the reasoning, the credibility on what gives me the opportunity to talk about this. But some of the leaders in the industry, Robert Schleip from Germany, one of the founders of the Fascia Research Congress. I've developed an incredible relationship with Robert Schleip. Tom Finley, who's an MD, PhD. These guys are the forefathers, the founding fathers of understanding fascia and doing the worldwide research through the Fascia Research Society. But what's interesting, when you talk about fascia, it's an integrated system. It's interconnected. It's a sensory organ that's interconnected, and it's more responsible for dynamic, explosive movement and injury resilience than we previously realized. And what I mean about that is, it's hard to maybe accept new things. And sometimes you look at research, and research can be not always accurate, if you will. So there's soft science, and then there's hard science. This is conclusive, hard, non-negotiable science. The things I'm about to share. Now, if you know anything about me, I'm very slow to jump on any bandwagon or get behind or put my name or our brand behind something that I'm not sure. I've never really have changed my views on certain things because I'm very, I guess you can say, late to the game, if you will, on new research or new things that come out. I'm always late to the game because if I'm going to get behind something and say, hey, this is the way to go, this is how you should train, this is how we're doing it, I got to tell you, it's the real deal. And I have a history of that to a point where back in the early 2000s, when a research study came out about why relative body strength is important for speed, and Charles Poliquin and all these guys started talking about strength training. You know, if you want to get faster, all you got to do is get stronger. That was a big phenomenon back in the early 2000s. We never bought into that. Even though research came out, Peter Weyand put a research study out of University of Harvard. He did a study on a $250,000 treadmill with a force plate and looked at mass-specific force, how strong you are for your body weight is a huge indicator on speed. And that's where strength training became really, really popular. But then we eventually realized through more research in 2010, again through Peter Weyand at SMU and Ken Clark, 2014, more studies came out. Hey, it's not just about the amount of force, but the quality of force and the speed of force, rate of force production, and also the ability to absorb force. So not to get into that whole thing, that's our speed training talk. But the thing I want to say is this quest continues. My quest to learn continues, and I've been on this journey about fascia. And for the last 5 years, like Chris said, really started to deep dive into this new science. Recently wrote a book called Fascia Training, A Whole System Approach. And what motivated me based on that book, it's a lot of factual science put into a story that's easy to read. What was missing in that book and the feedback we got in that book, people wanted more exercises, more training protocols. And now we're working on fascia training in application. And really, this is a synopsis of that new book. So you're going to get some great things out of this presentation. So let's look at the biological laws first, right? So in a understanding, when you talk about how the body re-engineers itself, it's a re-engineering organism, which the human body is more like a plant than a machine, right? We've thought about the Newton's laws and Newtonian laws of mechanics as the foundation to our industry. I will respectfully disagree. We are not built like robots. We are built more like plants that are self-assembling using chemically responsive processes that continually adapt to our environment. We're not machines built in a factory with component parts. You know, the fundamental drivers are biology, which are variability, resiliency, movement, cellular movement, system movement, organism movement. It requires multiple types of movement, a combination of stability and flexibility. Science is showing that this balance really enables the fascia system to thrive. And we're going to get into this because fascia it's a collagen and it's a fluid-based matrix of elastic connective tissues that surrounds everything in our body, all your muscles, all your organs, and gives us the structural framework that really holds us together. And what I'm talking about right now is something called biotensegrity. Now, I'm not going to get into this. Last year, I got into this much, much deeper, and I want to move on to the practical applications. But I have been fascinated by this stuff. This is like it, man. This is like huge. Like when you talk about training, the fascia system and understanding biotensegrity and what it means and how it works is hugely important. And I've had breakthrough after breakthrough. I am more fired up now at 53 years old than I was at 23 years old getting into this industry. And that's that's saying a lot, because when you hit your 50s, man, there's a little bit of a wall there. A little bit of a wall on your 40s, a little bit on the 30s, but 50s, it starts to kick in, and I hear 60s gets even tougher. But I got to tell you, this keeps me young. It keeps me fired up. So this thing called biotensegrity, when you really think about it, our body, it's actually held together by a single connected tensile system that integrates multiple joints and anatomical structures and allows us to really float, through the atmosphere. It really allows our body to move consistently in variable space using a fine-tuning system that's really an elastic suspension system. And when you talk about tensegrity, it's a combination of compression and tension. So if you look at this screen, or actually, you know what? I don't know if you can see, but Chris, can they see me? Am I on the screen or no?
You are, Bill. They're seeing you.
Oh, great. Okay. So I have a tensegrity model here. And what's interesting, tensegrity is a combination of compression, which is the struts or the bones in the body, and tension, which is the soft tissue, the connective tissue, the fascia, the tendons, the ligaments, right? Soft tissue. And what happens is, and obviously a good therapist, if you have a problem in your hip, they're going to, not only assess the hip, but they're going to start initially look at your ankle, look at your knee, look at your back. They're going to look at, the entire system. But this tensegrity model is really an understanding of compression and tension and how they work together, how an aspect of a limiting factor in the tension of the tensegrity network, if you have a tight, hip flexor, could lead to stiffness or tightness or an ailment in another part of your body. So understanding soft tissue, how to manipulate it. And now what I'm really going to talk about, how to train it. Because I believe Tom Myers, and there's a group of people out there that do a great job on how to manipulate the fascia and connective tissue system to create better posture, better gait mechanics, to create better injury resilience. But I'm here to talk about how do you train this connective tissue system, this fascia system, if you will. And it's a system that is very trainable. We actually do train it. We don't even realize it. We're training in a lot of different ways, just like we train the cardiovascular system, the nervous system, the skeletal muscular system. Those are the big three that we've been, quote unquote, training, but also our fascia system. And fascia really responds to stress and the lack of stress. So I'm going to get into the science behind this because it's very, very, very interesting. Let's talk a little bit about the catapult effect. For a long time, we thought that explosive power and speed was an element of fast twitch muscle fiber. And what we're realizing now is that has some influence, but not nearly the influence of the connective tissues. Why athletes are fast and explosive is more based on their tendons and connective tissue than muscle fiber typing. Now, that's huge, right? I mean, did everyone hear what I just said? This is brand new cutting research. And why am I sharing this? Why is this all new? Because we never had the imaging equipment to look at fascia. We never had the technology. It didn't show up on X-rays or MRI. Now with high-level ultrasound, we can really study fascia and what it is and study tendons and how they operate. Now, what's interesting, for the longest time, scientists thought kangaroos used to have the ability to jump 30 feet because they had this, fast twitch muscle. Well, it comes to show kangaroos have similar muscle as koala bears. It's not a whole lot different. What gives them that explosive power is their Achilles tendon, the stored elastic energy in their tendon, which I'm going to say something right now, please pay attention, which is non-calorie dependent. Let me say that again, non-calorie dependent. They did research for kangaroos where they measured their energy expenditure, walking, a quarter mile compared to hopping a quarter mile. They expended a lot more energy walking that quarter mile than hopping because all that energy was built up and stored in their Achilles tendon, their connective tissue that doesn't require nearly the amount of energy as muscular tissue. Humans operate the same way. Are you guys feeling it? Are you guys having some ahas? Like, this is huge. And this is trainable. I feel like it's 30 years ago. I'm saying you can improve speed. You can improve speed. And guess what? I'm now realizing here's a big way how. I'm not saying you don't strength train, or strength training absolutely does get you faster and gets you stronger, and that's a foundation. But that strength training and those muscles really play more of an isometric role in our speed than we thought, where the fascia and connective tissue really provide that catapult and that power generation effect. So, I mean, I'm really going deep here because it's really important. And here's a research study that shows it. So back at the University of Tokyo, back in 2001, 2002, they did a study, and they put a subject on a lying calf raise machine, if you will, with EMG and ultrasound and a force plate. They measured what was the activity like, what was happening at the fascia connective tissue level, what was happening at the muscular level, at the gastroc, soleus, and they saw and they found something really, really interesting. When the subject performed this movement, and I have this graph to show you, if you look at the movement A there, when the subject performed the movement where they focused on an explosive movement, you can see the red muscle fiber, the top, when they jumped off that, they did lighter weight and did more of a dynamic movement that was more of a isometric or minimal contraction from the muscle fiber, which is the red to the left, A. And if you look at the bottom, the blue, more of the elastic response or power came from the connective tissue, the Achilles tendons and the fascia. Now, when they did a traditional strength training movement, B, look at the red and how as you go along to the right, how most of the movement came from the actual muscle fiber contraction and very little from the elastic connective tissue. So what this is telling us, and this has been validated, what happens with the connective tissue, what this is telling us is that really our power development is really created, with a strength foundation. So like when you vertical jump real high, what do you got to do? You got to come down real fast, and you got to store that elastic energy. You got to be strong to be able to come down fast eccentrically and store and load that spring. But then when you explode, that elastic energy in the connective tissue plays more of a role than we thought, than just being muscular. So this is huge, like huge. And this connective tissue that kangaroos and cheetahs have and gazelle, humans have this same principle. This is why certain athletes that, they're not overly muscular, they might be really lean and thin, but they're athletic. They can jump through the roof. Guys like, Derek Jones, who just, look at his chin. This guy's chin is above the rim. Is that insane? His chin is right at the rim, and he's not overly muscular. This dude is a connective tissue tendon-driven athlete, and that's what gives him his athleticism. And if you train this cat the wrong way, you can mess him up big time. If you overtrain him with weights and you think he should squat and do, that's why basketball players are the most temperamental athletes, because they are traditionally connective tissue athletes. And now research has shown connective tissue is highly trainable. Now, why will I say that? Because, my good friend, I should say, I got to know him much better over the last year, Robert Schleip, who is, probably considered the top researcher in fascia in the world. He's put out the most books. It's coming out the new second edition of Fascia in Fitness and Sport. Just phenomenal, right? So he's a German lad, and we've had numerous conversations. And, not too recently, he's been working with Thomas Roller, who's a world champion javelin thrower. And we've got Chapman on the right that throws 105 miles an hour. Now you say to yourself, humans are not necessarily supposed to, throw that fast, or Thomas Roller, who's thrown 290 plus feet, aren't supposed to throw the javelin that far. He did ultrasound. Robert Schleip did ultrasound on Thomas Roller's right pec, and he found 3 millimeters of fascia around his right pec. He has, in fact, you don't see 3 millimeter thick fascia in the upper body like that, or in anyone. You see that on the bottom of the foot, on the fascia planta. You know, the plantar fascia, that's where you see that kind of thickness of fascia. Why throwers throw really far is this fascia web that gets created that allows them to create this spring-like action. This is brand new, cutting-edge research that's coming out, guys. Our body makes this fascia web based on the movements we do and also based on the movements we don't do. And I'm gonna get into how this works in the body and then give you some great applications on how to train this system. So, you know, why I'm fired up out of my head is that, you know, we've been training the cardiovascular system. Science came out about that 50 years ago, important to get the heart going. Well, we've been training the muscular system. Science in the 1970s and 80s came about, hey, you got to strength train. We've been, the nervous system, we learned about that. The elements of how to train the nervous system, we understand that. The fascia system is just as important, in some ways, more important than those 3 systems. The fascia system for a lot of sports that don't require high VO2 is way important than the cardiorespiratory system. I can tell you that right now. And injury resiliency, probably the most important system to understand how to train. So let's get into this. Let's see, okay? So again, I said before, how come we didn't know this, or how come we don't know this? It's a pressurized hydraulic system that only functions when you're alive, in vivo. Now we can get cameras that can go underneath the skin and look at this stuff. Can you imagine that? You know, 30 years ago, somebody would tell you, we're gonna get a camera and put it underneath the skin and analyze fascia. But now we can do that. The technology is absolutely insane. And now we can literally study it in vivo with modern imaging and diagnostic equipment. So when I started researching this, you know me, I'm nuts. I'm calling the top researchers of the world. I don't care. I'm calling them up. I'm emailing them every week. I give them a week to get back to me. Every week, bang, bang. Chris knows me. I'm out of my mind. And we get to know each other. And guess what? I always make it a win-win because I want to promote their research. And once they look at our website, oh, this guy's real. He's got a good network. He's got 100. Let me talk to him. Get his research published. That's the benefit of being in the position I'm in. But guess what? You're in a great position right now because I'm giving this to you on a silver platter. 5 years of research on a silver platter in an hour and 30 minutes. And that's what I love doing, man. This is unbelievable. I am fired up out of my head. Now check this slide out. This is crazy. This is a live video of a fibroblast cell that responds to impact, pressure, vibration, and stress. Now, I'm going to play this video for you because this is a fibroblast cell that's actually casting a web of collagen in the human body. Now, what do I mean? So fascia is basically collagen in water, right? It's a triple helix collagen, and combined with water, this pressurized system, and 90% of it is basically non-cellular. It's an extracellular matrix. This stuff lives outside the cells, but inside within fascia, about 10 to 20% are cells. Fibroblast cells are one of the cells, along with fasciocytes, that live within fascia, if you will. So fascia is this cellophane wrapping throughout every part of our body, around muscles, in between muscles, epimyosin, endomyosin, perimyosin, all these, that's all fascia around individual cells, groups of cells, groups of muscle cells, the entire muscles, groups of muscles, etc. It's everywhere. It used to be disregarded during surgeries. They didn't think it was just, you know, almost like a packing substance. You know, when you get a box from Amazon, there's packing substances in there that so it doesn't shake around. That's what most doctors and you know, surgeons thought what this stuff is. And you know what's crazy? A lot of them still think that. Like guys, I'm crazy. These are surgeons. I run dissection courses. I run them for MDs now. We run dissection courses for surgeon MDs to understand fascia dissection courses. So like, this is crazy. This is real. This is like science on your screen. A fibroblast cell casting a web of collagen, no different than a spider shooting a web in the outside real world. Now, check this out. This is what happens, guys. When I sit like this, right, rounded, and I'm at my desk my whole entire life, I've got millions of spiders called fibroblasts crawling around my shoulder, casting lots of web around all these muscles, my delts and my traps, locking me up. And it's all this white stuff now that is locking down that muscle. That's not what we don't want. So fascia will respond to the lack of stress, or it will respond to stress. So if I'm stationary in this position for hours every day, these little suckers, these little fibroblast spiders are going to be casting webs to lock us down. That's why in surgery, it wasn't too long ago, after surgery, they used to lock you down in a cast. Now that's voodoo, man. You can't, that's crazy, right? What do they do? You get surgery, get up right away. Why? They want to combat these spiders from locking your joint down. So, man, like, when I learn this stuff, I'm like, holy cow, this is like life-changing. This is industry-changing. This is insane. Like, how come everyone's not talking about this? I gave this talk at the NFL Strength Coaches event only a year ago. And a lot of the guys were like, wow, that's paradigm shifting. So, guys, I didn't realize, like, how many people aren't truly aware of what's going on with this system, right? This system has really, now the research shows, 10 times more of the proprioceptors than muscle. Let me say that again. This fascia connective tissue system, it has 10 times more of the proprioception than muscle. This is, again, 500 years of anatomy and dissection. We're just learning this, just learning it. That's why we run fascia dissection courses. It's like I said, a hydraulic system that only functions when you're alive. That's why with dissection over the last 500 years, when it's depressurized and the water's gone from the body, it starts to dissipate. That fascia dries up, and there's not much to really look at unless you are really skilled anatomist who knows how to dissect. When you get somebody really skilled, then you can dissect and look at and see the fascia. So again, everything I'm saying, guys, is factual. In a big way, proven by science. So we talked about another important point. It takes a lot longer to develop fascia tissue through something called mechanical transduction than muscle. So fascia's adaptations is much longer than muscle, where muscle can change in 2 to 4 weeks. Fascia is more like, anywhere from 6 to 12, 18 months where you get really adaptation. So it's important to understand that, this is a connective tissue. When I say adaptation, I mean noticeable adaptation where performance is going to change based on your connective tissues. And guess what? You're great throwers, you're great golfers, guys that, these athletic movements, guess what? They do a lot of those things over long periods of time. That's why Thomas Roller had a 3-inch millimeter aponeurosis, for a lack of better words, of fascia across his pec. You know what I mean? 3 millimeter aponeurosis. You're supposed to have that on the IT band or the bottom of the foot, not across your pec. I mean, guys, that's a breakthrough, baby. Like, it's like insane, right? Now, here's the challenge, and here's the big paradigm shift. I'm still a big believer in weight training. Like, so don't think it's all fascia training. No, but we've overdone it in the sagittal plane. We are overdoing it. And I believe more injuries and overuse syndrome is created because as performance coaches, we live way too long in the sagittal plane, way too long. The body needs variability. We are more like plants, not robots. We're not built with component parts. We adapt to the environment, and we can't live in that sagittal plane. Even though we are doing more things, we are training more functionally, we still do too many things in the sagittal plane where it's still overweight for fielding court sports. Now, if you're a power lifter, yeah, you can live in the sagittal plane. But I can tell you one thing right now: if you're a big-time power lifter, I guarantee you probably don't play a whole lot of golf unless you have a really unique spine. And Dr. Stuart McGill, who's become a good close friend of mine, and he's a great guy, and we've spent dinners together and spent time together. He talks a lot about having a spine like a log. There you go. That's the power lifter. Or if you want to be a great golfer, you need a spine more like a wire. And if you try to train that spine that's a wire like a log, you'll probably experienced some of the injuries Tiger Woods have experienced. So you got to understand the anatomy of the spine, your athlete's spine, who they are, what they are, and how they train, how they operate. Really, really important. Now, the unique thing about fascia is, in my opinion, and from the research I've gathered, fascia really helps facilitate what we call a mechanical composite. And I'm going to quote my good friend Stu McGill here, because when I wrote my first book, I interviewed Stu, and he's done some of this research back in the 80s or 90s, and he was so fired up when I was asking him these questions, because you know what he said to me? He says, Bill, no one ever asked me these questions before about fascia. This is awesome. I knew about this back in the 90s, but no one ever really inquired. And it was so unbelievable. So let me talk about this mechanical composite and how the body works with co-contraction. And if you hear Stu talk, or a lot of people talk, if you still live in that agonist and antagonist world, and you're talking about agonist and antagonist in terms of exercise and muscle, you need to move forward. That's old, that's outdated, and in a lot of ways inaccurate. Optimal performance, optimal training is about the ability to co-contract. Co-contraction is the essence of creating stiffness, and the essence of knowing how to create stiffness, because how fast you can run, how high you can jump, which I would assume, speed, agility, quickness, obviously is the essence for most athletes that we're trying to improve, right? That's like the game changer. Well, a big part of that is your ability to create stiffness when your foot hits that ground, not to leak energy out of the ankle, knee, hip, spine, core, what have you. And how do you create stiffness? Well, obviously you got to have a foundational strength component, but the optimal way to create stiffness is really understanding how to co-contract and facilitate that through the fascia, connective tissue, and nervous systems. That's really, really important. And what you create when you create this co-contraction, you create this mechanical composite. Now, what do I mean by a mechanical composite? Well, if I gave you a piece of pine wood, and I asked you, and say it was a half-inch piece, and I held it in front of me, and we're in martial arts class, and it was a pretty good piece, and you saw the way the grain was running, and you punched that, you probably could split it in half, like a white belt going to a taekwondo class, right? They have the little kids, they break the wood, and everybody claps. It's all that. But if you take that same piece of pine, and you slice that pine in veneers, and then you take that same amount of wood and you cross glue it together, you cross section the veneers and you glue them together, what you created is a mechanical composite, more like plywood. That is a whole lot stronger. And that's how the body works. The fascia system helps to facilitate co-contraction of layers of muscles to create incredible amounts of stiffness for optimal power production. This is earth-shattering and life-changing as a performance coach once you understand this, and once you understand how to go about training this. So that's why some athletes that might not be super strong in the weight room can do unbelievable things. Bruce Lee probably couldn't bench press 200 pounds, but that cat can generate a lot of force. And we know the essence of our industry is the rate of force production. That's the holy grail, whether it be into a ball, into a golf club, into the ground, whatever it may be, the rate of force production is the holy grail of performance. What is one of the key secrets that we haven't identified until now is the ability to create a mechanical composite and co-contraction. And that is facilitated not only through the nervous system, but the fascia and connective tissue system, which has now 6 to 10 times more of the proprioceptors that now we just realized than muscle. So it's all coming together for me. That's why I'm fired up, out of my mind, hoping you guys are digging it. And again, my goal is to get a 10 out of this, guys. Like and again, fire your questions out. I'm going to get to them. We're going to attack them, but I really want to give you this understanding. So this mechanical composite is really, really important. And that's where my good friend Michelle Delcourt, who's another, incredible friend and colleague, has shared his level of expertise in the application of this. But what we also did is we run these dissection courses. And what I did was, guys, I ran them with the top NFL strength coaches. So let me show you what I mean. Here's what we did.
You can't see it in textbooks. You can hear about it all you want. Until you see it, it is a life-changing experience.
The ability to put your hands on the muscles and the tendons and see what they really look like versus the pictures that you see in books over the years. It's a totally different picture when you actually get to put your hands on it, see it, feel it.
The Fascia Training Academy, it is unlike any other course you've been to. You could go get hands-on stuff all you want, but until you see the body, see the muscles, the connective tissue, the fascia, how strong the IT band is.
Really nothing that you can do that simply isolates a muscle or an area. I mean, everything's connected. You really get to see how the different muscles, tendons, ligaments, everything works together. So I really like Michelle's input because Todd's given a great scientific explanation, and Michelle is really able to connect the science to the practical use. Michelle's given us a lot of clarity on not only what it is we're looking at, but what we can do in our training to incorporate everything we've learned.
I could look at a textbook. You could tell me, you could point to the muscle. I will tell you that muscle. Like that, no problem. In there, that was hard. It wasn't until Todd literally dissected each muscle away from one another that you saw it. It is a bunch of tissue working together. I think it's phenomenal, and again, it's life-changing.
To be in the lab, first of all, with Dr. Todd, the sections to truly see each of those muscles, what they do and how they are connected. But then to take that information with Michelle here with us and expound it upon those things in the lab, but then taking it to the gym with exercise, which is what we do for a living. So players won't understand the muscles much, but they'll understand what they should feel like whenever they get on the gym floor. You know, and to have the fascial anatomy dissection course for all of my colleagues, NFL, college, get here. So it's a must.
So I share that with you because, you know, what do I do, right? Because I got to see it myself. So I not only go to a dissection course, I create the relationship with the owner of the dissection lab, an incredible relationship. Now we're running dissection courses, and we run them for the medical community. We run them for the NFL strength coaches, and we're going to be running them for you guys as well, you know, in conjunction and doing some work with Chris and Perform Better. So you guys can really see this and running them with some subject matter experts. So we're very excited about that. So getting different guys involved like Eric Cressy to talk about the shoulder and dissect the shoulder. So lots of really great stuff coming because, guys, hopefully you're feeling it. But like I'm on this quest, you know, if you ever say to yourself, oh, I know it all. I don't need to read anymore or about science or training or whatever. Man, we're just scratching the surface. We are just scratching the surface, in my opinion, because now we've got technology that's advancing our understanding of the human body. And this is something really, really powerful and real. So what's interesting here is Michelle Delcourt. And Michelle and I have become really good friends, and we're working very closely together. And this guy's a colleague and also on the Perform Better Tour and is very knowledgeable in this subject and really is one of my mentors. Him and Todd Wright, these two guys are with it. And Todd is the head of performance for the LA Clippers. I mean, I've did a deep dive with these guys to a point where in January, guess what I did? I went out to LA in January of 2020. And I was out there for 5 days, and I spent a day and a half with Todd, a day and a half with Michelle. We all spent the day together. We talked shop. We got together. I did a big photo shoot with those guys. Just super high-level guys that are dialed in. And listen, one thing about Bill Parisi, I've got zero ego. Like, I go into a room, I go into a seminar, I act like I don't know anything. I'll ask questions. People are like, why is this guy asking us? He doesn't know that. Maybe I wanted clarity. Maybe I wanted a different answer to hear it a different way. Like, I don't care. You don't have to think I don't know much. I'm not big on social media. Unfortunately, I should be, but I'm just so dialed into doing what I'm doing and researching and diving in that I just spend time on trying to grow. And I give most of that to the Parisi network that are involved in our network. So that's kind of my mentality where I might not be out there as much. Because we have more of a little bit of a closed network, but I'm happy to give it to you guys through this because this is a fun opportunity and Perform Better does a great thing. But let's go back to Michelle Delcourt and being a strength coach up in Canada, training hockey players. This was, well over 10 years ago. And he's getting his guys ready for the big leagues and whatnot. And his guys come back and he's talking to the hockey coach. Hey, how are my guys doing? Now they got to get stronger. So Michelle, being the strength coach he goes back, reworks the periodization scheme, gets the squat, gets the bench, gets all the traditional lift stronger. Next year goes back. How are my guys doing? Oh, got to get stronger. He's like, what do you mean? They're getting stronger. Who's beating my guys? And you know what the hockey coach said? The farm kids. The farm kids are beating them. Well, guess what? The farm kids, they've done some maximal loading in omnidirectional. That was their training. They didn't necessarily do a whole lot of traditional strength training. Not saying that would hurt them. That would even help them more. But the fact that they were stronger, did they have stronger muscles? No. They had a stronger connective tissue system. So if I had a wrestling match here today and I had two equally skilled guys, both at exactly 182-pound weight, and they had a wrestling match, one kid grew up on the farm and he's just farm boy strong and he's got that grip strength and he's strong in omnidirectionals, and the other kid grew up in the city and he was in the gym his whole life. Who are you going to bet on? You're going to bet on the farm kid. Why? Because the farm kid has an interconnected fascia system that is tight and dialed down. So this fascia system is no different than if you go to a powerlifting competition and they go to the bench press, what do they put on? They put on a bench press shirt, and that thing is tight. That's how fascia works. No different than elastic, around the ankle, around the elbow, around the chest. That's how fascia works. Just like that bench press. And if you realize that we're able to train that and develop that, that's like doing chores. And that's where Michelle came up with the Viper. So it all makes so much sense. And, just really excited to share this information with you. Now, how do you train the fascia system? How do you get it better for speed and power and injury resilience? And now that's what we're going to get into right now. We're going to give you movements and exercises and drills on training the fascia system. But before we do that, I really want you to understand the secret to training fascia, because it's different than training muscles, right? The secret is really submaximal loading and whole body three-dimensional movements. And we do that through a series of movements and exercises. And there's different tools that we use to go through these exercises and drills. And what's important before we get into the movements, that you truly understand the load paths and how they work, and the important anatomical adaptation and periodization cycles to this movement. So let's talk about load paths for a second. This means that we're developing and optimizing the fascia system involved in the training using different speeds and different tools at different angles to engage the entire body along different load paths or trains, right? So you've got the spiral line, you've got the superficial front line, the deep front line, the lateral line, superficial back line, the arm line. You have these different load paths that we want to address that's really going to activate the fascia system. We also, want to understand the importance of these load paths, like the superficial front and back lines, massive load paths, very important load paths. So just like osteoblasts build bone, like I said before, fibroblasts build fascia. They line up with the lines of stress or the load paths in the body, and we produce these fibers just like farm kids. They stress their bodies in all different angles and ways. So it's important. And when we look at this more at the microscopic level, and we look at fascia tissue, what's happening, it's very, very interesting, because well-trained fascia tissue is more lattice shaped, and this crimped like helix pattern, if you will, that gets trained and becomes more, dynamic, like, and strong, and, and can store and release energy, kind of like an eraser, if you will, for a lack of an analogy, where inactive fascia, or fascia that's, dormant, or you're training your emotions in a single plane of motion over time, you get this kind of matted, kind of felt-like fascia. So when you look at the felt material, what is felt? It's fibers all running in all different directions, kind of glued and matted together. That's what causes a lot of injury. Fibers that are, of course, you have your, you know, your fascia connective tissue system, but your myofascia, right? Myofascia, fascia interwoven between muscle cells, groups of muscles. If that gets, you know, if that becomes more felt-like or matted together, what happens? You get injured. You pull a muscle, quote unquote, but what's being really injured, what's causing that injury is the lack of the appropriate training of the fascia and the muscle combined. So really, really important. So as we kind of dive in here, we want to understand, you know, how the muscle really is, or I should say the fascia is remodeled, right? So when you think about fascia, collagen, elastin, and rectulacin, it's important that the fibers of the fascia, the myofibroblasts that are laying down this fiber, it's being done in a way that's remodeling, that is rate load specific. What do I mean by that? Rate load specific. So we understand that if we train fascia in a slow way, well, it's going to get remodeled in a way that's going to help support slower movements. If you train fascia, if you do things in a more dynamic, bouncing way, it's going to get remodeled in a way that's going to support more dynamic, faster movements. Now, there's still more new cutting edge research coming out in this, but it's really, really important that rate load specific is taken into consideration and you understand that. And, you know, we're going to address that in our application, if you will, as we get into that now. So when we talk about a movement such as skipping, right? This is a skipping movement, but we're going to skip in a rate load specific way that's really dynamic and structured and tight compared to your traditional skipping. So you can see how this form of skipping is a little bit different than your traditional skip. So you got to understand we're working on speed of the hip flexion and extension, arm flexion extension. We're really dialing the movement. So this is facilitating the development of fascia. So understand what we do and how we do it. So skipping is a skill, no different than throwing is a skill. And if you do this over and over again, the body's going to make adaptations. But it's, you know, there's skipping as a relaxed skipping and you just want to get blood flowing. Then there's skipping in a way to be dynamic and explosive. And this is the mentality, this is the approach I want you guys to really understand and start to get a handle on. So let's go into vector variability. And I think that's really important when we talk about vector variability, because when we train fascia, we want to train omnidirectional. Talked about the farm kid. Why are farm boys strong? Because they're omnidirectional. They're putting forces through their connective tissues through multiple vectors. And the Viper is really a great, great tool to do that. So I'm going to give you some movements that I like. You know, my top 8 movements of the Viper that I use consistently with my athletes and what I do. And I've got most of this stuff from Michel Delcourt and my time with him and understanding, but he's got thousands of movements and it's almost, you know, complex because it's too many. So I'm just going to give you my best. And we start off with the feet and glutes, and we're just going to work on, I think I put these out of order, but if you can look to the video to the left there, we're working on just training the big toe, putting some load on that big toe of the left foot just for about 3 to 4 seconds, and using the Viper to create a different force vector to come through our body, across our back line, our stabilizing, our core has to stabilize just to hold that Viper out in front of us as we're putting most of the stress on the big toe, but we're getting stress throughout the body. Then we're going to activate the glutes. So there's a couple different ways we'll activate. We'll do a front hip flexion, activating that left glute, balancing with the Viper in front. Again, the force going through our body with the video on the right. Then we've got the center video, working hard to keep a neutral spine. And we're dropping into that single leg support phase, activating that glute medius and the glute and the stabilizing muscles of the ankle. And again, holding that Viper out in front of us is causing all different force vectors to travel through our body, through our posterior chain, to really stabilize that Viper. So we're going to do these things as a warm-up and it's going to stimulate the nervous system. It's going to stimulate the fascia system. And what we're trying to get those fibroblast cells to really fire up and create that internal wetsuit, if you will, for a lack of better words. But at the same time, we're firing the glute. Now, I know Mr. Gary Gray would be very proud of me because we're warming up, standing on 2 feet. We're not necessarily getting on the ground, which that's voodoo to him. You know, everything is highly functional. So it goes along those lines. So, you know, my mentors are, you know, go long and wide, you know, from all the people in the industry over the last 20, 30, 40 years studying what they do. So this is the beginner, how we get going in terms of a fascia specific / warm up activation, if you will. Now, as we move on, we're going to start with some halos and get that thoracic spine loose and warmed up. We're going to go into a squat, opposite side reach, open up the shoulder girdle, and again, thoracic spine, and get halos going. And at the same time, we're getting a squat pattern going. We're working on keeping neutral spine the whole time and rotating to the sides to get that fired up. We're going to work on the groin and the hip complex with a side lunge, holding the Viper out to the side. That Viper's about, 27 pounds. And when I share this with you in terms of these holds, it's really, when you really extend the Viper out, it becomes a lot tougher. If you're holding it closer to your body, it's easier. So you can make those adjustments. And again, we're getting those fibroblast cells. We're trying to stimulate the development of fascia. At the same time, we're stretching the groin and we're putting force vectors through our body in a way that we normally would not. So this has been a tremendous, active, dynamic warm-up in a way that's stimulating the nervous system, the fascia system, the muscular system. Everything is getting fired up. So this is my little routine that I came up with that I like the best out of the literally, I think, thousands of exercises Michelle has. So those are a few. As we move on, we're going to go into some patterns where we're going to do some traditional movements where to the left, we're just doing a side lunge with a forward up and down lift. So we want to stabilize. Now, if you look at the video to the left, the Viper is moving, but I want to maintain an athletic position while I'm moving to the left and to the right. I'm training my core to stabilize the movements up and down. Again, I'm working all those stabilizers in the hip. I'm barefoot, as you can see. I've been barefoot the whole time with my athletes, up and down with an up and down kind of chop, if you will. The center movement is a front lunge and overhead diagonal turn, and it's a little bit more dynamic. And then I'll bring it into a walking lunge, the video to the right. So this is the exact warm-up that I use. I'll go through this progression as you see it from left to right of these last two slides. And it does a tremendous job of really not only warming the body up, but really stimulating the connective tissue system and really building a more, bulletproof athlete. So those are some movements that I really, really love. And then to finish, we'll do a little power conversion and really focus on the core. As you can see, I'm going to work on decelerations. I have these out of order. I apologize. Let's pause this one. So if you look at the video to the right, the first one I'll do is a deceleration lunge, where the video all the way to your right, I'm working on just firing the Viper down to my left, and I'm blocking, if you will. So I'm decelerating and blocking that Viper, and I'm creating core stiffness, co-contraction, activating to block. Then what I'll do, here is I will work the opposite. So I was working eccentric loading and decelerating on the first one. Now I'm working from a stop position. I'm working on concentric loading and exploding upwards, right? And I'm working on that element. So I'll go from, the first movement would be the right decelerating, loading, working on that eccentric ability, working the connective tissue to stop that. And obviously then working on the power development of the concentric. Then I'll work on on conversion. So the video to the left, I'm putting the entire movement together. So it's a down up. So you can see this is a vertical speed skater done in 3 phases. And I'm really developing that ability for power conversion, which is, you know, the essence of agility and quickness, right? Is the essence. So this is more on the vertical plane. We'll do this more on the horizontal plane, on a horizontal speed skater. This is a vertical speed skater. But you see how we broke it down and how we can really create complex movements by building the first couple pieces to it. So really, really great stuff, guys. I mean, I think, you know, hopefully you're getting a lot out of this, but this is incredible stuff. Now, I've always been a big med ball guy. I've been a big med ball guy since, I guess, you know, the 80s when I was, you know, throwing the jab. And I can't say enough about med balls. I'm going to give you my little med ball routine here that are staples. So those 8 movements I gave you with the Viper, those are really 8 staple movements that I love to do. There's others that we do, but those are the foundational movements we love to do with Viper. These are my 10 med ball movements that I really love and are foundational components. And, you know, I'll use Viper as a warm-up, you know, and we'll get all that in, and it'll be a real extensive warm-up, you know, but not too crazy. You know, we'll do 15 minutes of Viper, you know, 2 to 3 times a week based on the training goals and cycle of what we're doing that week. We'll also intermix med ball training with that warm-up, or we might do on alternate days more med ball training, because med ball training is going to do what? It's going to bring a little bit more, it's going to bring speed into the factor, right? So we talked about rate load specific, so we want to address speed. I always love starting med balls with the pushes here to the left, just dynamic, explosive pushes, and that's in slow-mo for you to see that. Then I love the overheads, the one in the middle, you know, and really getting that front line, that superficial front line in that fascia, so you can see how my guy there, Dan, that's my younger son, Dan, who's doing those med balls in the center. My older son there to the left is Will. So you can see how he's really activating. He's not really using his arms in that middle throw. He's really using his core and his trunk to initiate the movement, and the arms are finishing. Then I love the hip rotations here, the video to the right, and this is the order that we'll do them. We'll go into this motion after we do a little bit of a Viper warm-up, or we might, you know, do another warm-up and use this as a main warm-up. It depends on the day. But you can see how Dan's firing that hip, and he's bracing, and he's getting that hip and shoulder, the video to the right, to really lock in. You're locking the core, locking the rib cage to the hips, and really working and driving the hip to drive the med ball. So we like to really get this going, and this plays a big role because really the essence, the primary system we're addressing here is the connective tissue system. From there, we like to do what I like to call the dynamic stabilizing drills. So if you look at the video to the left, this is a quick load and explode rotational throw off the wall. And then what we got here, we're on one knee and we're loading into the wall. And what's important is when you receive the med ball is to really brace the core and not have a tremendous amount of rotation. We want to stabilize and minimize rotation, almost like a dynamic pow-off press, if you will, right? It's a dynamic pow-off press where we're stressing the tissue, but we're doing it fast, rate load specific. And then obviously we love the slams up and above, over, and you know, we love those PB med balls that are, you know, the new ones that they got about a year ago. They are just so awesome to use. And these are just, you know, my Big 10, if you will, movements. And now understanding what med ball training is doing, it's developing that fascia web around that core, you know, that wetsuit. And doing it consistently plays such a big role. It's important that you realize med ball training, Viper training, really should be foundational movements to your overall training. And then as we finish out with our med balls, we then like to get into really dynamic throws where we'll take more time in between each throw, almost like a field events person in track and field, you know, a shot put, a discus throw, a javelin throw. So we'll do dynamic, explosive overhead throws and really exploding. You can see my guy Dan here on this one. He's doing more of a dynamic lateral throw. into the wall, taking his time and really working on that explosive throw. Not so much being as repetitive quickly after another, but just taking the time and using more of a full body movement into these throws. So, you know, we want to make sure we're addressing all facets of the med ball and how we go about med ball training. Love doing combos, right? So, you know, there'll be days where we'll combo this. As you can see, I got both of my guys on the basketball court, and they're doing combo training. You know, they'll superset. They'll go from a Viper movement into a med ball movement, and we'll superset these combos. So it's important that we got that going and we understand that, and we can mix and match and have fun of it. I love using this as a warm-up. You know, I love making my warm-up 20, 30 minutes, but it's really so much more than a warm-up. We have on the back of the Parisi t-shirts, we have our warm-up is your workout, because the warm-up really blends right into the workout and really ultimately is the workout. We're just increasing intensity, increasing loads, and getting into more complex movements as we get into sometimes get into the skills section of our workout. Another tool I like, which isn't out there too much, is aqua bag training. This is an aqua bag that actually attaches to the back and to the shoulders. So we'll do sprints with the aqua bag to create unbalanced surfaces to challenge the body. That's my son Dan doing an indoor sprint barefoot with a 25-pound aqua bag with water on his shoulders, swooshing around left and right, just causing a lot of imbalance and challenging the nervous system, the connective tissue system in a way that is hard to challenge. Then we got my other guys. So my younger guy's a football player. My older guy's a basketball player. We'll do lateral shuffles with aqua bags. We'll do basketball specific with a heavy ball with an aqua bag on the back, challenging the lateral change of direction. And then, you know, just different dribbling drills. Again, what are we doing here? This is challenging core stability, but it's really challenging and stressing the connective tissue system to respond in a way that's going to facilitate co-contraction. That's going to create stiffness. That's ultimately going to allow us to perform a higher level of force generation. And, you know, my goal is to make the science simple for you guys. And these are just some great tools that I truly, truly love and am passionate about, and so excited to be bringing to you probably some new information that makes a lot of sense to you. So, you know, again, I think the proof is in the pudding. Some of the things we've done. My younger guy at the age of 15 at this point hit 22 miles an hour on a tough treadmill, and was pretty fired up about that. I mean, he made a 3 mile an hour increase in about 12 months, which was just completely off the charts. And I mean, not bad for a 15-year-old that was considered not to be overly fast to hit 22 miles an hour on a high-speed treadmill. So we didn't do a tremendous amount of weightlifting. We did weightlift, but the proof is in the pudding. The stuff does work in terms of training. And I got to tell you, one of the components to making it work, and not only the Viper training and the med ball training, but new modern technology. And I can't say enough about isokinetic, the modality that is. I've been a big believer, and Chris and I, we can talk about this on the Q&A, Chris, because him and I both been big believers in isokinetic technology. The only challenge is this technology, unfortunately, you know, is really old, I guess, and started back in 1967. This technology came out as part of the mini gym, if you will. And Jack Ghislaine made it really popular in 1973, where this leaper machine came out in the 70s. And Chris and I joked because I used it in high school, he used it in high school, and we got incredible results. And then what did I do? Well, when I found out, when I got into the industry, this was probably 5-6 years ago, I went and met the owner and the founder and the creator of the leaper machine in Missouri. I flew out to Missouri, stayed at his house. I was in his little factory, which was a small little shop that makes leapers, and I you know, wanted to understand it even more. So I'm that crazy. Like, I found a piece of equipment that I really knew was you know, working, this isokinetic technology. I called up the inventor and I flew out and spent 2 days with him to really understand it. And this guy's 93 years old, right? And what was amazing, and unfortunately got into a lawsuit with Cybex in the 90s because Cybex took the technology and made it into a $30,000 single joint machine. And then the technology eventually died. You know what I'm saying? Like crazy stuff would happen. And then the popularity just, plummeted. Until recently, guys, Chris introduced me to these guys over at Ohm, and they have isokinetic technology. So what did I do, guys? When I found out, Chris says, hey, Bill, I know you're a big fan of isokinetics and what it does, because isokinetics is the essence of creating co-contraction and facilitating fascia, the function of fascia. Chris put me in touch with these guys. So what did I do? I didn't dive right into it. I didn't start touting it publicly until I did what? I brought the isokinetic technology to who? Dr. Ken Clark, who's one of the most respected biomechanists in our industry, who has a PhD in biomechanics with a focus on speed and did tons of research with Peter Weyand at SMU, cutting edge research. So Dr. Clark is highly respected around the world. And ironically, Dr. Clark, believe it or not, was a Parisi Speed School athlete when he was a high school running back and got turned on to speed training through Parisi Speed School. Now I'm going to Dr. Clark, calling him Dr. Clark, who's a PhD. Bring the unit down to his facility. He does months and months of research on this isokinetic technology, and we find very, very interesting results compared to traditional weight training. We find that the rate of contraction and the ability to generate force at the end ranges of motion when the muscle is at its shortest length has a greater ability to generate force than we do with traditional weights. And we did these studies with force plates on both machines, the isokinetic technology machine and traditional trap bar deadlifting machine. And by the way, this is what makes band training so useful, because you're getting the ability, you have the ability to generate greater force at the end range of motion, if you will, or I should say when the muscle's at its shortest rate, because that's when we need optimal stiffness. When you're sprinting and you're firing your glutes, you want to make sure you're strong at all ranges of motion, the end range, the shortest range, and when the muscle is lengthened. You got to have strength throughout all ranges of motion. When we use traditional weights, mechanical advantage of the weight, momentum of the weight. So when you do a trap bar deadlift, what happens is, we noticed on force plate studies, when you're lifting that trap bar, initially when you get it going, we're measuring a good amount of force on the trap bar, as you can see on the screen. But as you come up, the force lessens because you got momentum. It's like riding on an elevator. When you're riding on an elevator and you're about to stop at the top, you become de-weighted or deloaded, if you will, because momentum continues to carry the weight. The same thing happens on the trap bar. So you're not getting nearly as the amount of force production in your glutes and hamstrings and low back as you're more than halfway through the lift as you are on an isokinetic machine. And again, that's why bands play such a big role. So anyway, not to go too deep, the technology is real and probably the biggest game-changing technology in the marketplace. And this machine that now Perform Better has, called the Ohm, it's an isokinetic machine that you can do multiple movements on that is absolutely incredible. That really, really is I would say, a key element to addressing fascia training, addressing co-contraction, all the things I've been saying for the last hour and 20 minutes. And guys, I'm sorry, man. I can't believe it's been an hour and 20 minutes. I feel like I'm energized. I feel like I just woke up. I am just fired up. My alarm just went off because it's been an hour and 15 and I set myself for alarm. So Chris, I got a few more to go. Am I still good to go right now? How are we doing? I got about another 10 minutes and then we can open up for Q&A. Are we good?
Yeah, no, Bill, please go. Keep going with the presentation and we'll take Q&A once you finish.
Okay, I just want to make sure I'm not just going too far. But all right, I want to finish up on this technology because I want to explain my experience with it and my passion, not only, for the isokinetic technology. I mean, listen, I'm not trying to push you on the Ohm, but I'm just saying the technology of isokinetic. Ohm has captured this technology in a way that's highly functional that I'm just like crazy about, because again, back in high school, Chris and I, Leaper, we knew it worked, but now I know why it works. That's why I'm so fired up. Like, I know why it works. Like the piece of the puzzle, I finally put it all together after 30 years of understanding in terms of the understanding of this. So some of the guys in the field that have taken this technology, not only the Parisi Speed School, but EJ Zebro, who's a licensed chiropractic physician, does a lot with injury. It's been a user of the OM for a couple of years. Burjesh Patel, strength and conditioning coach up at Quinnipiac, a really smart guy, and a martial artist, athlete, and owner of a gym. Joe is in Connecticut. These guys are guys that have had this machine in their facility for a long time now, well over a year, and just getting incredible results, doing incredible things. And I want to go into a little bit some examples of this.
Working more stabilization through the anterior sling, but we're going slowly enough, working on those running biomechanics, even with the non-functioning arm going through that range of motion, contralateral opposite arm, opposite leg connection. Yeah. And this one's interesting too, because not only are we working the anterior sling coming across through.
These are some phenomenal movements, guys. And what's incredible about this machine, and I want to show you a couple more, that your limitation is only your imagination. And because this loading mechanism is basically adaptive, meaning the load that is being applied is 100% dependent on the force that you generate. So we love this technology because it's ideal for overcoming an injury, it's ideal for rehab, and it's ideal for optimizing performance.
So we're walking forward again. We're close to that forward lean, that sprint position. We're up just a little bit higher. The focus really is on the eccentric preloading of the biceps, and also, again, keeping a stable spine, especially in the sagittal plane. So if I find that neutral spine, I lock it in, I step forward, I get that drag, and then I curl. Then I'm going to load up and drag again. Here, and curl. Here, curl.
So the resistance is adaptive. I love some of the things that we do here.
Eccentric preloading, but eccentrically preloading the anterior side, or pec major. As I'm stepping into it, resisted, pressing, and then stepping, and then press again. Make it one of those parts. Make you perform better. But this bilateral, action of the upper is huge with a unilateral step. Yeah,
So
and everything we've done.
What we're talking about right here, guys, because it's accommodating resistance, it's going to give you the resistance you need. Is the harder you push, the more resistance you're going to get. The functional movement of the standing press here, the fact that you got to co-contract your core, you got to stabilize your shoulder girdles, you got so much going on, your feet, everything's going on. It's unlike anything else, guys. It is literally unlike anything else in terms of athleticism and what you need to optimize performance. You cannot mimic this. So the combination of Viper and med balls in this is, to me, is just truly remarkable and just unbelievable. I mean, it's incredible what you can do.
So I like the retro walk first, because what we're trying to do is get people out of extension first and foremost, because a lot of people tend to be extended, right? So we give them a slight flex position.
This is up at Quinnipiac University.
So they can get better airflow. So you can kind of see how it opens up. So it brings a slight flexion. So then we'll go forward. We'll go arms overhead if you want to get a little bit more overhead.
This is a great core activator.
To get some overhead stability.
Kind of like a walking power-off press.
Lengthen lats. But we're going to use obliques too to create some stiffness to help their rib cage get anchored to their pelvis.
So these are all guys that have had this machine along with myself for a couple of years now or so, using it in different, and what do I do, guys? Listen, I use it. I'm in my own little world here. I go out. I want to come and see how you're using it. What are you getting out of it, man? There's no ego here. It's like, let's share. Let's create best practices, right? So just some examples, some more from Rajesh.
The frontal plane movement, right? So now we'll go lateral belly push walks.
Yeah, this is great. This is a lateral power-off press walking. Again, Gary Gray would be so proud.
This is a little bit more challenging. But I really like this because it's teaching you how to move within the frontal plane, but also create some stiffness.
Major stiffness at 0.5 miles an hour. Right? So it's a hollow press moving.
Yes. Yeah. Moving.
Constantly moving without, I mean, with the lower body,
so you're understanding connect toes to hands.
Wow.
We love it. Just absolutely love it.
So this first one is just
This is Joe, martial arts. He's a martial arts guy that has the machine.
Lat pull. Talk through why you like this for grappling.
So the biggest thing with
Grappling. Talking about grappling here.
Pulling, pushing, but the pulling is huge, especially with the gi. So constantly grabbing. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna stagger. I'm gonna engage. Once I engage, I'm gonna get my lats engaged. When I watch where my feet, I'm always looking at the average pull. I'm sitting here leaning into it, and I'm pulling. And you can see the average. I'm averaging right now 130 pounds pulling. And I'm using just my back. That's good form. About 5 reps on my right, 5 on my left.
Virtually impossible with any other piece of equipment.
Unbelievable. And the best thing, like I said, you feel like you're going to be sore the next day. And there's no soreness at all.
So Joe is a grappler. Funny story about Joe competing. He's wrestling, goes to his place to work out. People were saying, Joe, man, you've gotten so strong, because he started just beating on people. And they're like, dude, what are you doing, man? Are you doing something like, not above water? You juicing or something? He's like, no. And it was training on the ohm. I mean, how much stronger he got. It was so interesting and functional. So a couple more.
So the next thing I do is triceps. So the reason why I started doing triceps, my shoulder was hurting. I can't do push-ups. So it was hurting me to go on the side X machine and do tricep exercises. So what I'm doing is I'm going to do kickbacks. But I'm going to do kickbacks with my palms down and kickbacks with my palms up. And so you got to believe the machine. So I'm going to do a small pull. I'm going to drop down.
See, now Joe, it's nice. Keep going. Keep going. Now, here's the thing. You feel, that you're isolating a muscle here, and in some ways you are, but in other ways you're not, because for you to stabilize and do this exercise is a lot of other things have to be turned on and working.
Okay.
So for you to maintain balance and that resistance pulling your body, the proprioceptors in your feet, your legs, your spine, your core, all those things have to activate, or you would not be able to actually maintain that position. So this, although you might think this is an isolation-based exercise, it is to a degree, but you need to stabilize throughout the body. Now, what's nice is this is another pulling type action with a tricep focus, which I think really enhances your athletic MMA ability. Do you agree with that, Joe?
Absolutely.
So, hey, Chris, did you hear that whole dialogue, or do I need to repeat that?
No, I heard it.
Okay, great. I just wanted to make sure people got it, because, again, guys, what's great about this technology, we're still in discovery phase, if you will, in terms of all the different types of people using it. So at Brijesh, they have, obviously a strength coach at a Division I university. Joe is a big-time MMA guy. Different. EJ is more of an injury recovery guy. So the machine is in these different locations that I went to and spent time with to really deep dive with these guys. And we're just cross-pollinating our experiences and learning from one another. And, Joe's thinking, hey, this is isolation, but hey, no, it's really not. It's, in some ways it is, but it's not. And that's what's great about this machine. We're in discovery with all these different users and just super excited about it. I mean, I couldn't tell you, man, and we haven't even scratched the surface. I mean, this has been something that we've been using a lot. So, just a couple more to show you on this, and then we'll open it up for Q&A.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to come across my body. As I come across my body here, keep my body straight, going across. Take one step.
Yeah.
Come across.
What's the name? What do you give it?
What do we name this one, Dave? We haven't had a name.
All right, we'll move on to that one. And then obviously, I mean, this is kind of at the Parisi Speed School, if you will. This is our contribution. I mean, this is an easy, no-brainer one in terms of resisted running, but we'll just do resisted running at different levels, right, of different isokinetic levels. So we'll do first, more resistance, or I should say slower speeds. Then we'll increase the speeds, and we'll do a lot of different things. So, there's a lot of things we can do on this machine and what we can and how we can make it really user-friendly. That doesn't mean we don't do the traditionals, right? We do the traditional lifts. We'll make sure we'll never get away from them. It's important that you understand that, but it's really a new world, and the new technology is really, really important.
Bring the Viper up. Push it out to your right. Drop it up.
All right, guys. I am officially through my slides, and Chris, I will hand it off to you, and hopefully people got something out of that.
Bill, do you have the NSCA slide that shows the CEUs?
Oh,
it's
sorry.
all right. So after the Q&A, guys, we're gonna post it, or we're gonna post it up here while Bill's doing the Q&A. So Bill, you can stop your screen sharing, go into the questions, start to take the questions on, and we'll get the NSCA CEUs. How you're gonna get that? We'll put that slide up. We'll share that screen. So
yeah. Sorry about that, Chris.
No problem. We'll put it on.
All right. I did stop screen sharing. Oh, Chris, can you hear me?
I can, Bill. Just click on the Q&A, and you can start right from the start.
Okay,
right
so
the first one
says here, John Barnes has been discussing fascia in the physical therapy world since 1983, when I was a very young physical therapist. As a manually based therapist who treats many athletes, it definitely contributed to my early career success and long-term results with my clients. And yes, being a skeptic is great. It's wonderful that the science has caught up with John Barnes, caught up with what John Barnes has been saying for almost 40 years. Okay, I guess that's not a question. Can 50-plus-year-olds get relatively faster? Yes. Can 50-plus-year-olds get relatively faster? And the answer is yes. Jeff Miller, how does fascia affect breathing and the diaphragm? Yeah, interesting that you mentioned the diaphragm, because I think the research I've been doing along the diaphragm, that's a kind of hidden gem in knowing how to facilitate I should say the relaxation of the diaphragm. I think the diaphragm, a lot of athletes, is hyper-facilitated or hypertonic, and forced exhalation, really working to kind of exhale as much as you can, getting all the air out, and then once you think you got all the air out, blow again, and then blow again. So 3 reps of not inhaling, but exhaling. And I think by developing a routine of forced exhalation, we do that with the Viper, is really going to help get that diaphragm to calm down. That will facilitate greater glute activation. So, that's an inhibitor. When the diaphragm is hyper-facilitated, it really inhibits the glutes to fire. So in terms of fascia training related to that, we incorporate forced exhalation with Viper training. So that's a great question. I think that was, Jeff Miller, great question. Hopefully that answers your question about the diaphragm and incorporating forced exhalation. Tommy, do you think training muscle specifically without the addition of plyometric activities contribute to tendonitis tears due to imbalance? Absolutely. So just focusing on traditional muscle training without doing plyos, definitely, because you're never going to get the level of activation in the connective tissues in terms of rate of force through those connective tissues, the tendons, the ligaments, the fascia, that you get in plyos that you don't get in traditional strength training. So again, that question was, do you think that training muscle specifically without the addition of plyometrics
or similar activities can contribute to tendonitis slash tears or due to imbalances? And the answer is yes. Jesse, do we know the response time of fibroblasts? As I sit here now, are fibroblasts laying collagen in areas of stress? Great question, Jesse Perry. So let me answer this question. The question is, are fibroblasts, how fast do they start laying down their web? How fast do these spiders start casting the web? Well, let me ask you a question. If you go for a long car ride, what happens when you get out? It might be an hour car ride for some people. They get stiff. It might take 3 hours for others. An older person, it might just be an hour. A younger person, it might be a 6-hour car ride. What's happening? What creates that stiffness? It's the fibroblasts literally laying down that collagen in minutes, so that's happening a lot. So when you stand up out of a long car ride and your hip flexors are all tight and locked up, you are literally breaking apart the collagen, just like you would run your hand through a spider web in the corner of your house that you're cleaning out and dusting your house. Literally the same thing is happening, guys. The same thing. That's why they want to get you moving post-surgery immediately. Melissa, the sad part is, much like any Eastern-based methodologies, is that this has been discussed a ton, just no one listened. Glad to see it's coming up more. Great energy. Oh, thanks, Melissa. I'm sorry, Chris, I'm just reading them all. So some of them are just comments. I'll try to find the questions do you see them as well?
Yep. Nope. You can comment on the questions too, Bill. But yeah, nope. That's some of them are that.
Okay. Yep. How about thinking of fascia as an agonist or antagonist in a movement, not necessarily the muscle? Interesting. I think, obviously fascia plays a role to really help, stabilize and provide, structural integrity. And I think fascia really acts in facilitating both. I mean, we kind of, with fascia and understanding fascia, we lose the thought of antagonist and agonist. They kind of don't exist in a way in terms of when we talk about performance and true function. So we really think of the fascia is that connective tissue that really allows us to facilitate co-contraction. This is fascinating. Thank you, Judy. Tara, is maintaining good position, for example, at the bottom of a drop squat or push-up, an accurate way of thinking about co-contraction and the mechanical composite term you used earlier? Yeah, so I think it's interesting because when you're stabilizing, say the bottom of a push-up or the bottom of a squat, yeah, you have to facilitate a lot of muscles to co-contract to stabilize that movement. Absolutely. But what's important for athleticism, you have to do that at speed. So not necessarily with a load on your back. We want to maintain good position with load. I mean, that's going to work certain things in certain ways, obviously, and work stabilizers. But we want to be able to do that at speed. And that really is the essence, the rate of load, right? Rate load specific, we call it. So really, the body loves variability. The body loves variability. For a lot of people, if you eat the same thing over and over again, you might develop a food allergy, right? I mean, so in everything we do, our digestive tract loves variability. So understanding the power of variability, we're more like plants, living organisms. So it's important to not get hung up on one thing. I know we always want the ultimate silver bullet, but we don't have that. Next one. I know we can injure connective tissue. Can we actually injure or tear fascia? Absolutely. I mean, that's the tissue that a majority of the time is getting injured. If so, how would you know you have injured this area? Well, I think, obviously, ultrasound is going to give you a better indication, but a majority of the time, what's injured is the connective, the fascia tissue. Now, when we talk about fascia, it's all interconnected, myofascia. Fascia runs through the muscle, right? Through every cell. But the way I like to describe it is simply this. And I validated this through the dissection courses that I've done.
A muscle without fascia is chop meat. Muscle without fascia is pulled pork. So why do you slow cook pulled pork? Because when you slow cook pulled pork, you dissipate all the fascia. You're melting away the fascia. So in a dissection lab, when you carve away the fascia, you can literally dig your hand through the muscle a lot easier. Now the fascia is interwoven, so it's not as easy, but if you slow cook pulled pork, you'll know what muscle's like. So what really is being injured, I mean, the muscle, there are times you tear muscle as well, but more often than not, it's the connective tissue, because we do strength training, we get strong, but that connective tissue isn't strong enough to hold everything together. And that's what really breaks down a lot of times when we do too much quote unquote muscular training and not enough, training the fascia, training at speed, like the skipping movements I was showing earlier, all the different med ball dynamic movements, or just like bounding movements or more fascia related movements, right? Like just a lot of body weight movements, a lot of speed drills, a lot of, speed activities are fascia related movements. So hopefully that helps. Great material. Glad you presented this. Thank you. If you look at the NZ, I think that's his typo, black. All farm kids. Do you think we can get training model to shift to this type of training? Yes. I love that. Parisi goat chasing speed training. Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I think, listen, the resources out there to get more of this stuff. Perform Better has tons of resources. I think the Ohm Group, I think Michel Delcourt and Viper, they provide a ton of training resources for this training modalities, and I'm happy to share them. These guys have tons of resources to follow up what I was talking about. How do you set the load to optimally develop fascia strength? How important is it? How important is intent to move at speed in development of fascia strength? Really good question. So when you talk about optimally developing fascia strength, there's really no, I would say, optimal way. Think the optimal way is like grow up on a farm, right? I mean, it's really variability, vector variability, load variability, and speed variability. That really is the answer. So I think there's no necessarily an optimal way. I feel if you, became aware of this, which you now are more aware of fascia training, and slowly incorporate some of these training modalities, whether it be med balls, Viper training, Ohm training, those are the three primary modalities we use, along with our traditional modalities that we've been using for 30 years, all your speed development drills, all those drills are fascia related. You're not really gaining muscular, tissue. And when you do speed related drills, you're getting the nervous system to respond, and you're getting the fascia connective tissue system to respond. So, that would really be a key element to that. Why do you think there's such a resistance to fascia and its importance in the rehab profession like physical therapy? I'm a graduating student, and we had zero instruction on it. That is a really good question. I believe the therapists that are really great, they get results. Now, it's amazing the stories I hear, guys, about people with injury that go to therapists that don't have fascia, understanding or training, how they didn't get better, and they go to a therapist that truly understands fascia, how to manipulate it and how to treat it, and all of a sudden they're getting their patients better. I don't know. I think traditional education is just behind a lot of this stuff. A lot of this stuff is really new, and I would stress, check out the Fascia Research Society. Those are the cutting edge people. I'm fortunate enough, they asked me to be on the board of directors of that society with the top researchers in the world. I guess they like my energy and my ability to transfer information to the masses. And my network has grown to some of the top people around the world being on the board. And that's part of my job, is to help bring this information out. Keep tuning in to Perform Better, because I know Chris is on fire with this stuff. And I'm collaborating relationships with Chris and the Fascia Research Society and the top minds in the world. So you'll get more education from Perform Better on that one. This is awesome. Thank you, Diane. Let's see. Hey, Bill, this lecture is amazing. to your point about fascia building the spider web-like system in the context of poor posture or poor distortions, when the myofascial system does get matted down, do you start with manual therapy prior to loading the system to develop more resilient structures in the exercises you showed? Absolutely, and that's where my man Tom Myers has done an incredible job. And the manual therapists that are very familiar with fascia, you absolutely need to take advantage and break up those adhesions and get to a licensed professional, or even as a coach. Right now, I put my hands on my sons, and depending on the client who they are, I may or may not put my hands on them, but absolutely understanding this stuff. And guys like Dan Path has been doing this stuff for 20 years, and a lot of people thought, like, what is this guy doing? And he looks at you, he puts his hands on you, and all of a sudden you're running faster. But yeah, you got to get it broken up first, because if you don't and you go into these movements, you're at greater risk for injury, for sure. So you really want to make sure you get the manual stuff working first. How much does the Viper weigh, and thoughts on using sandbags or similar effect? Absolutely. Viper comes in, I think, Chris, 8 different weights, I believe, right?
It does, yes.
It goes, I think 4 kilos is the lightest, which is like 8-9 pounds. And then it goes to, I believe, is it 24 kilos, Chris? No,
32. They just added a 32 this year.
Yeah, 32 kilos. So the tool is really the next kettlebell. And what it's just missing is education like this. But that's a great tool, and the handles are set, and Michelle has incredible content to support it. But absolutely, sandbags can be used, medicine balls can be used, kettlebells. But the Viper has specific protocols, which I really like. But absolutely, you can adapt to it and use tools you might have right now and start taking advantage of odd positional strength. Odd positions for rate, or I should say omnidirectional loading, if you will, which is ideal. Hey, Bill, you said changes take longer than training with the fascia. I'm very interested in what applications this will have training the senior population, not necessarily training for speed, but for more improvements in mobility, walking. Absolutely. For the senior population, by all means. So some of the movements you're not going to do with your senior population, but just understanding different postures and just using body weight and isometric positioning, odd positioning holds for the senior population. They get them stronger, making sure they're getting enough collagen. So, bone broth has become really popular. I get my kids to drink bone broth every single day to facilitate collagen synthesis. So yeah, you don't need to use a lot of weight. It's just a matter of putting the body in these different positions and understanding, maintaining neutral spine and understanding what that client's objective is. If they're a senior citizen, they're just looking to move better. Absolutely. The fascia system is the first thing to go, because we lose water every year we get older. I think it's over 30 years old. Like, we're losing more and more water every year out of our system. We eventually become a dehydrated raisin by the time we're 80 or 90 years old. And that's where the fascia system really locks up. So it's a matter of squeezing water through your body, through movement, through exercise, through manual manipulation. And also, obviously different types of movements, different postures, different ranges of motion for that senior population. Great question for that. At what age do you think we start fascia-specific training? Well, great question. Let me ask you this. And this is really, I love this question. And man, I can't believe we only got 10 minutes left, and looks like I got a lot more questions. But if you're a 5-year-old, right, would you take your son to the local Taekwondo studio and start him to train Taekwondo? I would say yes. Taekwondo's been around since the 1970s, right? Teaching kids, they're a white belt, and then they're a black belt, or I should say after, maybe 5 years, they become a junior black belt. What do you think's happening? Do you think, I'm sure everyone knows someone or saw a 5-year-old who started martial arts, and by the time he's 10, he's a pretty good athlete. He's a 10-year-old, junior black belt. He can punch, he can kick. He's a lethal little kid. And he still hasn't hit puberty, right? What happened? Well, guess what? He really dialed in his nervous system, and he started to develop and facilitate greater fascia to be able to strike and punch. So you can start fascia training at a young age. By the way, your fascia system is the first things that develops in the embryo. It's a big ball of fascia that ultimately develops over time. So yeah, you can start very young. It's all about the load that you're using, and a lot of the load is body weight. A martial artist, a taekwondo athlete, they're not really using any load. They're punching and kicking a lot, and they're generating force at high speeds. And you need a stabilizing factor internally to stabilize. Think about all your organs, all your muscles. They need wrapping to hold them in place. That's what fascia is. And when you're challenging your body at speed and you're doing it consistently, and that's the key, guys, when you're doing it consistently, the fascia system and fibroblasts are going to develop a greater fascia web to facilitate those movements. Chris, I'm going to pause here for a second. I know we got more questions. Did you want me to barrel through, or did you want to jump in at all?
No, Bill, keep going. We'll take a couple more. I'm going to actually put the NSCA slide up here in a second so people can take a screenshot of it.
Okay.
But keep going. We'll come back in, take a couple more questions, and then you can start to wrap it up.
All right. Hey, great, guys. Eric from Foreman Fitness, thanks for being on out there in Grafton, Wisconsin. Appreciate that, my man. Let's see. Next question. What are your thoughts on foam rolling? Can foam rolling fascia have detrimental effect on speed? Interesting. Foam rolling. Here's my thoughts on foam rolling. I like foam rolling. I mean, one, to find a trigger point and get that trigger point to calm down, right? Just try to use foam rolls just to find it. And then number two, I like the foam roll and kind of almost to help wring out the muscle, meaning your muscle's a sponge, right? And you almost want to, wring out the old blood and the toxins in that muscle and kind of, flush the muscle system out before a workout where you might have been dormant, and even post-workout. I'm not going to do it for long periods of time. There's been interesting research that's come out over the years that, too much of it might be detrimental. Guys, too much of anything is no good. So my answer to that is, you get all these conflicting statements. You should foam roll, or now it's no good. Now, everything in moderation. Find the triggers, work them out. Use, a lacrosse ball for your feet. Using the lacrosse balls, all the different devices to get yourself, flushed out. Find those trigger points, get them to calm down, get them to relax, and then flush the muscle with foam rolling just by squeezing it out. Eric Laser, thank you for the 10, man. I appreciate that. Love the passion. Keep it coming. Let's see. Hey, Bill, great presentation. How is the OM machine similar or different to Kaiser pneumatics? It's isokinetic, and it's the OM machine is really accommodating resistance, and that's really what makes it different. There's no eccentric loading, which I love, which forces your muscles to relax as soon as you're done generating force is something we want. Stu McGill talks a lot about not just the rate of contraction, but the rate of relaxation. Really, really important to optimize performance, the rate of relaxation. And I think using isokinetic on this specific machine allows us to train that because we're maximizing force production. And in a millisecond, as soon as you stop, your muscles automatically relax. And I like that. And that's the big difference of OM due to the Kaiser air compression. Would the Vertimax and K-back systems be considered isokinetic? No, they would not be isokinetic. Isokinetic is a very consistent motorized speed. Although Vertimax is a great tool, we have them, and there's a little bit of a different training effect. There's a eccentric loading to those when you use the tubing. Isokinetic, there's no eccentric loading, which I do like a lot for a lot of different reasons, but I still do use Vertimax. K-Box is obviously a very focused eccentric loading mechanism, which again is a different resistance, and based on that athlete's needs, they might need more eccentric loading based on what we like to, we use the Sparta platform. We use force platforms to measure our athletes based on their eccentric or strength and eccentric loading phase, right? So in a vertical jump, your anterior chain might be weak. Your ability to eccentrically load may need to be developed to maximize your force production, because if you don't load that spring. If you can't load that spring eccentrically, you're not going to have optimize your vertical jump, or I should say really optimize your injury resiliency, because that balance between, you know, eccentric and concentric, or posterior chain strength, anterior chain strength, and core stability, you know, if there's an imbalance there, you will have a higher injury. And Sparta Science has proven that with some interesting research, the Force Platform company based in Palo Alto, California. What do you think about stretching before training, losing properties of stiffness for the next session? What do you think about training? I want to make sure I read this right. Think about stretching before training. I am not a big believer of static stretching before training. I believe, and I know the research is out there, hey, you static stretch, it comes back in so many minutes. I believe in a more dynamic warm-up, Viper type warm-up, med ball, going through ranges of motion and not holding anything for more than a second or two. Now, if you have a specific need in a joint that needs a greater range of motion for your sport, then I believe static stretching makes sense, but not right before you get into a heavy session. I would say, 20 minutes before your session begins, go through your statics of the joint that needs that range of motion. So my high hurdler is going to need more hamstring flexibility than my basketball player. So I'm not going to be worrying about stretching hamstrings on a basketball player where, a high hurdler who's, trying to get his leg up really high in front of him, his needs are different. So everyone is individualized. Their training program is more determined on the sport-specific needs, and the range of motion you should be working towards should be dictated by the sport you play. End of story on that one. Very, very important. You never want to stretch away that beautiful, tight fascia that you need to jump high unless you need it for a specific sport. Let's see, Chris. It's still like I got a ton coming. I'm about 3/4 of the way through, not even. I'll just try to get a couple more. Hey guys, I'm trying to get better on social media, and also I would say check out our social media. I can do a Facebook Live with the group or continue this conversation. I have an open Q&A, but I know we're at 3:58. Chris, did you?
Let's just wrap it up with the last question. Just take one more, and then we'll close it down. Aaron's going to put this slide up right after you're done with this. So just take one more, and then we'll close it down.
Yep. Let's see here. Let me just find. How do I spell it? Michole, Michole, Del Cord is on that one.
Also, Bill, to add on that one to Michole will be presenting August 6th. He's in the week number 8, but he'll be on August 6th. Coming up at 2 p.m. So he'll be one of the presenters. So I know Bill mentioned him a lot, but be sure to catch that one when he comes on.
Okay. And I guess, how do you combine the classic strength training with this ideas of some sports that need a lot of levels of force? Okay. So that's an interesting one. How do you combine the classic strength training? So, I had an interesting conversation with Dr. Bill Kramer a couple weeks ago. I would say the godfather of strength training in the NSCA. Wouldn't you say, Chris?
No doubt.
Yeah. So I reached out to Bill Kramer, right? So I'm talking to him. So I'm just this guy in this quarantine, just calling all these guys and asking them questions, right? What the hell? Just doing more and more research because I'm writing a couple more books now and excited about the books I'm putting out. So I had a conversation with Dr. Bill Kramer. We talked about this strength thing, right? So he has some research. He hasn't even put out some of this stuff, but he kind of really he emphasized, the holy grail on strength in terms of speed is 2 times body weight on the squat. So 2 times body weight, you don't need much more. And that really stuck with me. And this is something I think a lot of people might have known for a long time, but some people maybe would say 2.2. It's actually about 1.85 for women and 2 times for men. Some people might say 2.25, 2.5, but I'm going to go with Bill Kramer's research, and a guy that's written over 12 books and published 500 research papers. I think probably the godfather of the researcher on strength training, and 2 times body weight on squat. And how strong is strong enough? And to me, if you want to be a fast, explosive athlete, 2 times body weight is strong enough. Do what you got to do to maintain that or get there on the back squat, that is. And then, along the way, continue to do all the things I shared here today, and you're going to reach optimal performance. I think that was a great question to close out. What do you think, Chris?
It was a good one. We'll end it right there. Well, Bill, thank you so much for today. Let me turn my video on. So thank you so much for today, Bill. Great presentation. Actually, some great questions. Energy. I know there was a lot of questions on the energy of you, and I always tell people when Bill gets, when Bill is onto a topic, when you see his passion and you see it in his face, that he's onto something. And obviously that showed the entire time today. Great at making fascia training, obviously more comprehensible, more understandable, and more especially how to train for it, which has always been the confusion for the last 10, 15 years, I think, with it out there. But thank you so much. Erin's going to put up the slide for the NSCA. So you can see the CEUs on there. While it's up, just take a picture of it. We're posting it every day. So it's every day at the end of a presentation. Just take a picture of it. This is how NSCA is giving for all of our seminars that we're doing throughout the summer. They're giving 0.2 CEUs. You're just going to log into their site and just follow the directions and you go through. That'll be, again, we'll show that at every presentation as we go through. Bill, again, great job today. And again, thanks everyone for sticking around today and enjoying the presentation. Tomorrow, we have